Check 1 2, check 1 2. I did not get that last message, but yes, I am very much ready for Bathurst. 100% ready for Bathurst this weekend. Again, my favorite endurance event in all of sports car racing. And ever since I started doing this commentary and even started sim racing, participating in a Bathurst 12-hour in some way, shape, or form has been my goal. Well, here we are. Laguna Seca for the regular season finale for the TRC Brands Baddies Championship. And Elizondo and likely the teammate of Vasquez both looking to reclaim their position at the top of the board. Hopefully at the end of qualifying, and very hopefully for them at the end of the race tonight. It has not been as pretty as it was in the first half of this season for the McLaren duo. Easily the top two drivers in the Mercedes team, and also very much in the grand scheme of things. So with this series, it is a 6-round regular season where we have the different manufacturers split by teams. Elizondo gets too much of that sausage curve heading up turn 6. And went off into the sand trap there. But the way that this is going to work is each of the manufacturers has a team, and each of the manufacturers has a GT4 car. So in the first 3 rounds of this season, we raced in those GT4 cars, representative of those brands. The only team that was an exception was the Mustangs, as we were in the Camaro for the Mustang team. So it's just kind of like an American manufacturer team. So we ran through 3 rounds of GT4, and then at round number 4, we transitioned over to GT3. So maybe drivers who were a bit quicker in the GT3s than they were in the GT4s get an opportunity to show how big of a difference that is. We also have some drivers that have easily shown that they've got the skills to contend in whatever the car is. But all of that to transition us into round 7, which is going to be the season finale. It is going to be a 1-hour endurance event. I believe the finale is at Watkins Glen, but I will need to double check on that. I guess the best thing for me to do would be to just look at the sim grid. Don't know why I was trying to find it on the. So yes, it is going to be it is an endurance finale at Watkins Glen. Let me see if I can find out some more information on that race. But I believe it's going to be a 90-minute race at Watkins Glen. But the kicker is that the top 10 drivers at the end of tonight's running, so the top 10 drivers as we head into the final round, will be taking up the mantle in GT3 cars for their team. This is, again, a team championship, so there will be a manufacturer's championship and a manufacturer's podium. The way this is going to work is the top 10 drivers in the standings, not top 10 for the teams, just top 10 drivers in the overall standings, go into the final round with triple points. I believe it's triple points for the top 10. But they go into the final round, and with that, they will have an opportunity to score some big points for their team. And all other drivers that are outside of that top 10 will be racing for their team in GT4. So still opportunities to get some points for the team there, and still plenty of racing to be had. But again, it's going to be an endurance race finale next week at Watkins Glen. But we got to make it through tonight. And there is a bit of a sorry, it's a 60-minute race this weekend worth. Oh, it just says multi-class finale. I know it's 60-minute races for the GT3 rounds, but if anyone who is participating, or possibly Mikey or somebody could hop in the chat and tell me the duration of the finale race, I would greatly appreciate it. But yeah, so next week, next Wednesday, we will be having a multi-class finale before the winter break. And then we'll come back next year with a new weekly series for Wednesdays. Although there is going to be a short series, a mini-series over the holiday break. So racing will still continue. And if you are trying to find somewhere to race, the best place to do that is going to be with TRC over that winter holiday. Elizondo fastest first into the sub-24s in this practice session. Horner quickly trying to close the gap, but going too wide up the uphill left-hander. Okay, the finale is 90 minutes. That's what I thought. Just wanted to verify. But a ways to go. We still need to make it through tonight's race. 1 hour here at Laguna Seca. We are about to get transitioned over to qualifying. But I will like to thank you all who have tuned in early. It's definitely going to be a spicy qualifier. And for those standings, the majority of the top 10 pretty well decided. But there is a bit of shakeup that can happen, specifically between the 9th and 10th placed drivers in the standings of Craters and Winter. Wilson a few points behind those two, but depending on the finish tonight, Craters, Winter, and I believe even Breakfast needing a good result tonight. Not sure of exactly how in danger they are, but we really won't know who is in until we cross the finish line and take the checkered flag tonight. So if you would like to see who's going to make it to the finale, you're just going to have to stay right here and wait till we come to the checkered flag. And for everyone watching, and for everyone who does like to support me as we get transitioned over to qualifying, I think that was Douglas in the Porsche wanting to go very early, and that is Douglas, but Elizondo with that front spot in the pit lane, denying Douglas the first car out of pit lane. But I hope that you will be here Saturday morning or Saturday evening, wherever it is for you. I believe it is 8 a.m. Central Standard Time. We will be live with the Aztec Racing ATR Bathurst 12-hour. And I will also be live with Zalexi, another very talented ACC and F1 streamer. And we will be doing the full 12-hour stream of that, plus a bit of practice and qualifying, so I'll definitely have my breakfast and coffee well before the green flag. But it should be a great time, and I hope to see a few of you out there. Down into the final corner. Elizondo ready to get us started with this qualifying session. First out and first across the line to start a flying lap with the Porsche of Douglas right behind. And Douglas very much a threat to this Mercedes team. Douglas, if he's able to get out front very easily, can stay out front, but he does have to hold the Mercedes of Elizondo at bay if he does, and that is no small feat whatsoever. Elizondo, multi-time champion here with TRC, his teammate Vasquez as well. Two absolute top talents that teamed up together. I don't think too many in the league were very happy about that, but they teamed up together. And that Mercedes team has been doing very, very well throughout this season. For the manufacturer standings, it is Mercedes with a pretty large lead. Elizondo actually losing the car there. Is that going to allow Douglas to be the one to set the par time for our field, at least early days in this qualifying session? Across the line at 123.740. Young goes second fastest, Harris goes third fastest, but still quite a bit of the field yet to qualify. But 25 drivers in tonight. Going to be a good showing. Douglas too much of the sausage curve into 4. That is going to take him out of contention there, at least for the time being. Franklin in the McLaren goes second fastest. Still a large gap to Douglas, and I'm sure that gap will be filled. But regardless, Franklin currently up to P2. Ones to watch again for that pole position. Vasquez, one of those. Still in the pit lane now, finally rolling out. And again, we are starting with a track that does need to develop a good bit. Elizondo across the line to start another flying lap. I think maybe backed out of this lap prior. And yes, breakfast, let's go racing. 10 minutes left in this 15-minute qualifying session. Wagner, the Porsche teammate to Douglas, goes second fastest until Winter then goes second fastest shortly after. Still a large margin to Douglas, but Winter trying to lock in that 10th position and move on to the finale in the GT3 class. Remember, Winter is on the bump spot. Oh, of course, slap shot, of course. Douglas is quick here, yes. Douglas is quick, but Elizondo, who we are currently on board, typically is quicker. Down rainy curve. Flowing, you really let the car kind of ride out, use all of the track, and very much going curb to curb, inside curb to outside curb to inside curb to outside curb. Out of the final corner and across the line, what are we going to see? Good enough for pole, almost down into the 22s. 23.070 from Elizondo. Almost a 3/4 of a second gap to Douglas, and Elizondo showing the Mercedes mean business again this week. And although Elizondo and Vasquez are definitely well seated into the top 10, there's nothing wrong with a little show of dominance. Speaking of Vasquez, still yet to put a lap down for qualifying. Down into what is known as turn 1, but technically turn 2. And that is the Andretti hairpin now out of 3. There's a couple different variations of what you would call the kink here. Some call it turn 5, and then the uphill left-hander turn 6, and then the kink of turn 7, and then they call the corkscrew just turn 8. Sometimes they call it turn 7 and 8. Sometimes they call it turn 9. But Vasquez looking to get up there with the teammate, as we have seen multiple Mercedes 1-2s down through the corkscrew around Rainy Curve, as I believe that is the number 103 Aston Martin ahead of Bird. And the Aston Martin moving out of the way of Vasquez as he goes to cross the line and give us a flying lap, likely a valid flying lap. Good enough for P3 though, not good enough to get up there alongside the teammate on the front row, but lined up right behind. Could be just as good of a result. We'll have to see if it will stay. Still a large margin to fill in a track that is yet to develop, still running green. We should see at least fast conditions, and our drivers know that with the track conditions. They're going to be watching the track start to develop, and faster laps of this qualifying will likely come towards the end of it, as we have seen all throughout this season. The fastest laps right as we come across the line for the checkered flag, the end of qualifying. Still a few more minutes and a few cars out on track to get some more rubber down. We may see a track improvement and times start to drop. Who is going to run our first sub-22? Elizondo currently in the pit lane, likely putting some fresh tires and a new load of qualifying fuel, which is not going to be very much at all, probably just enough for 1 lap or 2 maybe. Do need enough fuel to get out there and warm up the tires. A bit off the apex and an awkward rounding of the final corner from Vasquez. We'll see what it is when he crosses the line. It's good enough for P2, this time just over half a second off the teammate, knocking Horner down from P3 to P4, and Horner trying to score some desperate points for the McLaren team, as they were very much up there, have wins to their name this season, but just not really the result they have been looking for. I don't think they are going to be in contention of the championship. That's pretty much locked down for the Mercedes team, as they very consistently have solid finishes all the way up and down the grid. But some good finishes for McLaren to round out this season, and specifically in the final round with the triple points. We are definitely going to have the possibility of McLaren sneaking up into the championship podium for the manufacturers. Now in the overall, there are a couple McLarens in the top 10, Craters and Horner being 2 of those McLarens in the top 10. Then we have 1, 2, 3 Mercedes. And then is nearly a contact there with the 67 of Harris. That Mercedes that ended up going around. There are some Fords, just not very many, as remember, part of this championship was 3 rounds of the respective GT4, and the respective GT4 was the Camaro for the Mustang, as they don't technically have a Mustang GT4 available for us. So this was a split class championship. The first 3 rounds were in GT4. The final 3 rounds will be in GT3. And then the top 10 in the standings at the end of the race tonight will be advancing into the final round, a Watkins Glen 90-minute endurance race. Those top 10 will be staying in their GT3 cars while the rest of the field is going to be running in GT4. I believe those GT3 drivers, it's either a triple point podium or triple points for those GT3. I believe it's just triple points on the podium, but still opportunities all around in that finale endurance race to score some crucial points for your team and try and get onto the podium. Winter eclipses Douglas, goes up to P3, right around half of a tenth faster than the teammate. Knocks Horner down to P5. Bird and Mikey, 2 very successful Aston Martin teammates, running in P6 and 7. And Valorio, currently the top scored BMW, coming out of the pit lane for one final attempt at a flying lap, and also has Trotman Grant right beside. That's not going to be the best way to come out and warm up those tires. Diving out of the way for the traffic on a flying lap to go past. And we'll wait a bit longer. You can't wait too long though, as you do need to get out there and cross the line with enough time left on the clock. It's also very quickly going to cool your tires. And no big contact. Vasquez, on what would have been his final flying lap, has a margin to build, and it was a clash between teammates there. The Mercedes of Breakfast and the Mercedes of Vasquez. Have a good night, Slapshot. Thank you for stopping by. But the 2 Mercedes teammates contact here at the end of qualifying. That's a bit of drama there. 246 of Trotman Grant off at turn 5 will return to the pit lane, and that's going to bring it into his qualifying session. Winter in the pit lane is not going to be able to improve. Will stay P3 at least, or at most may move down if anyone brings a faster lap. Horner still out there as we have a few seconds left. The number 97 of Merkel across the line will get another lap. The 35 of Granados will get another lap. Getting very, very close to the cutoff line. The 913 of Craters barely going to have enough time to squeak another lap in. But is it going to be the 12 of Norman that will be the first to end this qualifying? I think it's going to be right on the cusp. And it's going to be somewhere in this pack. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And the 15 of Elizondo. Is he going to be able to get another lap? If he is, it's right on the cusp. Drain is going to get the checkered flag. Will be P10 and no better. The number 103 of Bird next across the line. Currently P6, looking for some improvement. Doesn't need much to move up a couple spots. We'll see if he's found any time on track. And across the line, got out of it early, is not going to improve, stays P6. The 35 of Granados in the Aston Martin. Down through the penultimate corner and running towards the final corner. Needs to keep it valid. Also the number 18 of Bahena behind. And across the line from Trotman Grant. It is good enough for not Trotman Grant, for Granados. It's good enough for P21, the 18 of Bahena, good enough for P22, 915 of Horner, P5, Valorio, P8, the 67 of Harris, who also has the 12 of Norman. Norman invalidates that lap. And the 99 of Wagner. Harris across the line, good enough for P15. The 99, good enough for P13. And the 555, good enough for P15. Once again, it's Mercedes on pole and a Mercedes lockout on the front row. Elizondo, P1 Vasquez, P2 Winter, P3 Douglas, P4 Horner, P5 Bird, P6 Mikey, P7 Valorio, P8 Trotman Grant, P9 Drain, P10 Franklin, P11 Craters, P12 Wagner, P13 Young, P14 Mott, P15 Harris, P16 Norman, P17 Wilson, P18 Jennings, P19 Merkel, P20 Granados, P21 Bahena, P22 Atwell, P23 Breakfast, P24 and Caligari, P25 rounding out the field. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we will be sitting on the grid awaiting the green flag for the formation lap, and then we will get started with the final round of this race. Welcome in, DD. We are currently just sitting, waiting for qualifying to kick us over. Ran a quick ad. Not everybody is going to see the ad. But I just want to make sure that I get rid of ads for the rest of the race. We are about to take the green flag. It's 2 Mercedes ahead of 2 Porsche, with a McLaren in between 2 Aston Martins, then 2 BMWs, then 3 McLarens. Whenever we come back live, I'll make sure I run through that. And welcome back. We have just a couple minutes before we get started with the formation lap and rolling for the final round of this TRC Brands Baddies series. Final round of the regular season, that is. The top 10 in the standings after we get done with this race tonight will move on and stay in the GT3 cars for the multi-class endurance finale at Watkins Glen next week. The rest of the field who doesn't qualify for those top 10 spots in the overall standings will stay in their GT4 cars that they were in at the first 3 rounds of this season. But once again, it is 2 Mercedes, a Mercedes lockout on the front row. And yes, I did steal that line directly from Crofty. And in the second row, right behind 2 Porsches, with 1 McLaren, 1 lone McLaren up in the top 5, and then it's 2 Aston Martins back from them, 2 BMWs back from there, and then 3 McLarens, rounding out the top 12, the top 6 rows. And then it's just pockets of sporadic cars. Mott, Young, and Harris, those 3 have been running together pretty much the entire season. Breakfast has also been in that group, and when those roving trio of Mercedes come by, you better make sure that you are on your game, because they'll swallow you up real quick. Same thing going to happen with the McLaren trio of Drain, Franklin, and Craters. Craters is in a position, really needs to score some good points tonight, is one of those drivers who is kind of right there at the cut line. Currently P9 in the standings, does have a bit of a lead to Winter, who is currently P10 in the standings, but Winter currently P3 in qualifying and will start 3rd on the grid, right there in that second row. And Winter, not one to count out when it comes to a potential win, especially for the Porsche team who desperately needs it. I don't think they're going to be able to get any much closer to the Mercedes team than they already are. I think that is pretty much locked down for the Mercedes team, but there is triple points for the podium next week. And if they can keep the Mercedes duo off the podium next week, it may give them a good opportunity for a shot at that championship win for the Porsche team. Elizondo gets us rolling for this formation lap. And the final formation lap of the regular season here at the TRC Brands Baddies Championship. Elizondo, currently your championship leader, does have a bit of a margin to the teammate of Vasquez, who is lined up P2, will be right beside his teammate. And then Douglas, who is on the second row in that third place position in this championship. Also, thank you, Pep, for the subscription. If you would like to subscribe to the Twitch channel, supports me a lot monetarily, and I get a bit more incentive from Twitch and things like channel points and stuff for more emotes and abilities for chat. And it also is free if you have Amazon Prime. That's the best way that I recommend to subscribers. If you have an Amazon Prime account, you get a free Twitch Prime subscription that you can use. Doesn't cost you anything. Gets rid of all of the ads for you on both the live streams and the VODs. And it supports me in the process. If you are not following, I'd greatly appreciate it if you hit that follow button. And same thing with the YouTube streams. All of the races are dual streamed to the YouTube channel. You can find the link to that in the About tab on the Twitch channel. And from there, you can subscribe to the YouTube channel, trying to get the subscribers on YouTube closer to the Twitch followers. And we're also trying to hit a Twitch follower goal of 500. Come down Rainy Curve and line up 2 by 2. It's 2 Mercedes ahead of 2 Porsche. All 4 of these drivers very, very talented and also very, very aggressive. We have seen a lot of teamwork throughout this season, especially with these 2 Mercedes drivers at the front row. Very, very good at helping each other out, not really hindering either's pace. They have not had the best of luck throughout the GT3 iteration of this season. We'll see if they can find that luck and that strategy once again. Elizondo leads the field with Vasquez to his side. We'll see if they line up one behind the other as we come up the hill towards the line. And our green for the end of the regular season. 25 cars roaring up the hill and then down towards the Andretti hairpin. Vasquez does have the Porsche of Winter up the inside. Vasquez gets a bit caught out. I think everything is clean behind. Vasquez losing 1 position, may lose 2 as he's got Horner around the outside and Winter wants to follow. Actually, I say that's Winter as Horner goes wide off into the sand. Vasquez has Douglas, who is trying to slot ahead, does slot ahead of Vasquez, and now it is a Mercedes sandwich with Porsche as the meat. I guess you could just call that a pork sandwich. And even possibly a pulled pork sandwich, as those 2 Porsches are getting pulled apart very quickly with all this fighting. And behind, we do have a bit of a drama. Horner off the track, and that's also Craters in the McLaren off the track. Norman in the Aston Martin off. I think there was a bit of an issue at the uphill kink. Again, very crucial for Craters to have a good finish tonight, as he is kind of on the bubble. A poor finish tonight with a good finish from Wilson and Winter. Anyone else close behind could spell doom for the McLaren driver and knock him out of the top 10. I believe it would leave Horner the only McLaren driver in the top 10 should Craters drop out. Elizondo out front. Winter will try to give chase. And Winter again on the bubble, that 10th spot. Try and make the cut for the top 10 drivers in GT3 next week. Winter can bring home a solid result, which anywhere on the podium would be a solid result, as he's got Douglas pushing behind. Douglas maybe thinks that he's the quicker driver. Winter goes off into the sand. That's definitely going to slow him down, and we'll see if Douglas tries to get by sometime after the corkscrew, maybe rainy curve, maybe down the pit straight. Douglas definitely has a run, possibly some team orders coming between the two Porsche drivers. Mikey and the Aston Martin trying to give chase. There has been a bit of a gap that has grown, and I think it is due a bit to the discourse at the front of the field. And no, what has happened there? Douglas had to avoid making contact with the teammate, will drop back behind the BMW of Valorio down to about 8th. And who is that in the McLaren that was off? I think Drain also went off the track there as well. And now the lone Porsche of Winter at front will have to try and hold the 777 Mercedes of Vasquez behind. We'll see if the 777 is a bit of a stroke of luck for Vasquez, who has not had the best run this season in the GT3s. And I think that was contact between the two teammates, a bit of rear damage on the number 333 Porsche. And a bit of a sitting duck is Winter as they come up the turn 6 kink. In an hour race and plenty of race left. But Winter, again, definitely needs to try and have as good of a finish as possible. Very lucky that the contact with the teammates did not result in anything worse. And no, Vasquez, that luck, once again, not going Vasquez's way, unsettling the car down into rainy curve. And just having to slot back in behind, and will fall in behind the number 16 of Mikey. We've had an off, I think it's between the 12 of Norman and the 79 of Caligari. Not too much damage between the two, but an off there at the corkscrew. And Elizondo has gone very far ahead, 4.2 second gap already on the 4th lap of this race. Again, Winter in the Porsche has to try and just go head down as long as possible. Possibly let the Porsche teammate of Douglas try and get back into this fight. Vasquez has a lot of work to do, was fighting for the 2nd spot to get right there behind the teammate. Is now, after that mistake at Rainy Curve, fighting for the 3rd spot to get back onto the podium. Battle between Valorio and Douglas. Both of these drivers behind the Aston Martin of Bird that they are slowly catching up on. Valorio defensive, trying to keep the Porsche of Douglas behind. Douglas, at least in qualifying, was quicker. The 246 of Trotman Grant off at the corkscrew. Does rejoin. He does have a bit of damage on the front of that BMW. 35 of Granados, I think, possibly also had a bit of an issue. And again, just growing the gap is Elizondo, 2 seconds on that previous lap. Mikey trying to score some crucial points for the Aston Martin team. Does have a Bird just a couple spots behind, immediately behind the Mercedes that is giving chase to Mikey, and Atwell in the pit lane. Is that from a large impact? That is not good for the Aston Martin team, as they need all the help they can get to score as many points as possible, as they are directly in competition with the Porsche team for the championship podium. Aston Martin trying to hold back the Porsche as it is Porsche in third with 1731 points behind Aston Martin with 1924 points. And 3 Porsche in the top 10 is not going to be helping the Aston Martin team whatsoever, where they only have 2 in the top 10. Need to have as many drivers as possible in that final round and to try and get onto the podium in the endurance races. Remember, the podium is worth triple points to what they normally are worth. Opening potentially for Vasquez there, but not close enough to get it done. Drain and Valorio now fighting for P6 as Valorio, I think, maybe had a bit of a slide on his own. Unsure of exactly what happened there. Don't think there was contact. Valorio, serious issue with the car, has not rejoined the circuit, now finally does. This battle up at the front for the podium. It's Winter in the Porsche trying to secure his best finish this season. What has happened to Elizondo? And what has happened to Winter? Very, very crucial moment, not only for Winter, who may now stumble into a win, as Elizondo, seemingly with some connection issues, has been returned to the pit lane. And with the fastest lap and a comfortable lead, may now be completely out of contention. And we have a race up here. It is now 4 cars in contention for the lead. And uh-oh, this championship and the top 10 heading into the final round may be completely turned on its head. Winter too deep into the Andretti hairpin. Now defensive with Mikey, who will try around the outside at turn 3. And now has to try and do double defense with Vasquez in the Mercedes, who now looks up the inside of Mikey. Is Mikey going around at 4? Yes, he is. Vasquez will follow suit. And is it Bird who also wants to follow suit? They're looking to be 3 wide heading into turn 5. It's not going to happen, though. Winter goes down 2 positions. Bird wants to try and get the advantage heading up the kink of 6, but it's not going to happen. It's now Mikey in the lead with Vasquez right behind, and this is more like what the Aston Martin team needed heading into this final round, but he does have Vasquez, who is a nasty threat to try and keep behind. We saw Vasquez slice his way through the mistake that Winter made and followed Mikey right on by. Now Vasquez with a shot at victory, putting the Mercedes team back on the front row and back on the top of the podium. I think Vasquez may go for it down into the Andretti hairpin. He has the inside. They make contact with each other. Mikey gets turned hard into the wall. Bird also gets contact there, and the entire top 4 of the champions, or of the field, is taken out. Mikey able to keep it righted back on the track. Vasquez from P2, Winter from P3, and Bird P4. All 4 of the top 4 involved in contact, coming down into the Andretti hairpin, just a bit too eager with moves here and there. Go on board with Mikey. I don't think he has too much damage, but he's definitely not going to be happy about that, and may have some aerodynamic damage. And what an incident. Mikey finds himself in the lead now, and Wagner for Porsche in P2, Franklin with McLaren in P3. The 9-13 of Craters, with an issue at the Andretti hairpin, has decided to return to the garage. And that was not a very good incident there. Mikey got turned across the nose of Vasquez, hard into the wall, and with nowhere to go. Both Winter and Bird involved in that contact as well. You can see Bird, who is now down in P5, has quite a bit of damage. on the front of that Aston Martin, but at least for the time being, does seem to be able to drive it well enough for now. Franklin trying to chase down the Porsche of Wagner. And Douglas found himself back up in P4. Top 5, it's Aston Martin P1, P5, Porsche P2, P4, and a McLaren right in the middle there. I don't have a sandwich joke about that one, but what can I say except championship implications? That is really about all I can say. Vasquez did rejoin. He does have damage, quite a bit of damage, and he is back in P9. Winter, who also has damage, down to P12. The Aston Martins, despite being in the direct center of that conflict, were actually the ones that made it out the best in all of that mess. And now, at least in the top 10, it could be Aston Martin extending their lead rather than Porsche encroaching on that lead. The lead ahead of the Porsche team, not the lead in the manufacturer standings, that is still very much held by the Mercedes team. Elizondo has managed to get back out on track, but is laps down. We'll see if he's able to scrape anything together for the team. I believe out on cold tires, just ahead of our race leader of Mikey. And that may make things a bit interesting heading into the final round. A bit of, well, maybe I'm up the inside of you trying to eye a move into the final turn, the final lap of the 90-minute endurance race at Watkins Glen next week. And maybe I get a bit of a remember Laguna Seca on my mind. Just a thought. Something to hold in the back of your mind as we head into the endurance finale next week. But it is Wagner who is ahead of Franklin, trying to chase down the Aston Martin of Mikey, a wounded Aston Martin, I should say. Unsure of the exact extent of the damage on that Aston Martin, but it's definitely not 100% healthy. Franklin, for the McLaren, trying to maybe bring a very good finish for the McLaren team. And no, immediate commentator's curse goes off at turn 3 and around into the wall. And with big damage, someone please clip that. As I'm sorry for the commentator's curse there, but sometimes it just happens. Now, Douglas slot in right behind the teammate Merkel, off, and the 915 of Horner off again. And around has to get the car refired, and we'll get it turned back the right direction. It's still quite a few Mercedes at the top. Vasquez trying to reclaim positions. And ladies and gentlemen, this is not over yet. We're only 15 minutes in. It does feel like we're halfway through this race. The 555 of Mott does go for a lunge into the final corner, and we'll get the inside of Bird. Vasquez ended up going off and will actually drop down a position beside the BMW of Valorio. They will go side by side down into the Andretti hairpin. Vasquez will try the long way around the outside, but it's just not going to work there. Very hard to get that to work. Now Mott, the top scored Mercedes driver, and who was that? Harris in the 67, almost immediately making the same or similar mistake to the McLaren of Franklin. Definitely some championship implications in this one. And we could have a shakeup for those final spots. For the first 10 spots, or the final few spots of the top 10 who will take GT3 cars into the multi-class finale next week. And no, Vasquez with another incident at the corkscrew around. The 777 is not lucky tonight. No dinga on that spin. The 35 of Granados also off at the uphill kink. And well, it has been a bit ugly in this one as Douglas is trying to catch up to the Porsche teammate of Wagner, and I believe Wagner would let Douglas pass as Douglas is in direct contention for the overall podium in this championship. He has confirmed from Elizondo it was a disconnection. So very unfortunate there, but he is well locked in to the top 10. Just needs to have the head down, ready to go next week for the endurance races. Even though Vasquez may pull up alongside and possibly ahead of the teammate of Vasquez, or the teammate of Elizondo. Depends on the finish tonight. There's 30 points between the two. Douglas is right there behind Vasquez in the championship. And Douglas is let by the teammate and now has free reign to try and chase down the Aston Martin of Mikey. And this again, a very good opportunity for Douglas to make up some serious ground in this championship. And this could possibly put Douglas in second place of the overall standings and in a very good position to take the win in this championship next week at Watkins Glen. Just have to be there next week to see how it goes, but it is getting very interesting at the top of the field. Have I said playoff implications yet, or championship implications? It's a bit of the NASCAR fan coming out in me there, but very much championship implications tonight. Bit of a group developing as Mott ahead of Bird, who also has Harris, Wilson, Valorio all in that group as well. Harris ahead of Wilson, ahead of Valorio. Young just in the background there as well. Quite a few cars together in this battle. Still only a third of the way through this race, and with what's going on, you would think that we're almost done with this race. Douglas has definitely closed ground on the leader of Mikey. Again, Douglas has a lot to strive for, doesn't need to push too hard and ruin his race, but would like another win under his belt. Could potentially put him very close to Elizondo for a fight in the championship. And I think Douglas is only seeing potential right now, especially as he's getting closer and closer to the rear bumper of that Aston Martin ahead of Mikey. Again, we don't know the full extent of the damage on Mikey's Aston Martin, but at least for the time being, it seems to be okay. Obviously, not at the upper echelon of pace, and is probably not as quick as it was, but neither is Douglas's Porsche. As you can see, it does have a bit of damage on that passenger side. Douglas can find a way past Mikey and take home the win. That would put him in a very good position to be in contention for the overall championship, and I believe it would be Douglas's first championship win here with TRC. Douglas right on the bumper of Mikey. We will hop on to battle for P4 in just a moment. As of right now, we are staying on this battle for the lead as Mikey will try and defend this lead from the Porsche of Douglas. Again, Douglas, a very, very young driver, but very much showing the talent. You may recognize Douglas, who also races Go Fast Racing on Mondays. Very much getting out there, and we do have an incident. The number 81 of Breakfast off, and while it's not the most crucial incident, it is definitely not going to help the Mercedes points, as they do need all the help they can get to try and hold the Aston Martins and Porsches back. Douglas trying to find a move here, making contact, trying to push Mikey through the corner, and he's pushing Mikey down the straight. Does not want to get past yet. He wants to try and force Mikey into a position. Now Mikey may have a bit of PTSD from this move before, as that's when it all came crashing down between himself and Vasquez. That's where all that damage on Mikey's car came from. This time goes a different route though. Mikey a bit off the apex, does open the door for Douglas at the inside at turn 4. Side by side, the two of them go. Has to afford the space around the outside that will give Mikey the inside at 5, but has Douglas closed it off, or is Mikey? No, Mikey throws the nose in there. Is Douglas going to be able to get the old switcheroo? No. Douglas forced to stay the long way around the outside. Mikey says if you want it, it's going to be a lot harder than that to get it up through the kink. This is where it can all come apart for you as you follow as close as you can to the car ahead, but maybe they take you on a different line than you're used to. Douglas goes very, very shallow through the corkscrew, and he sends the move. Does the same thing that that Mikey did to him earlier, but then contact between the two. Mikey resumes the lead. Douglas gives it back to him, but it is absolutely elbows out for the lead. Mikey does not want to give it away. Douglas will have to size this move up once again. Wilson trying to defend against Valorio, as Valorio does go wide. Very much hurts your speed down the pit straight. Back on with the battle between Douglas and Mikey. While this is a battle for the race lead, at the same time, as Mikey loses it on his own. I don't think there was contact. Mikey is backwards. I think he held the clutch and kept the car from stalling. And now Mikey going to get swallowed up by the pack. I think Mikey just made that mistake all on his own. And now it's an Aston Martin trio. They play defense for him to hold BMW of Valorio back. Mikey tries to regain his footing, but now it's Porsche 1-2 with a Mercedes in third place. Again, that is the last thing that the Aston Martin team needed. They need to try and hold the Porsches at bay, as Aston Martin tries desperately to hold on to the second place spot in the manufacturer standings. But as of right now, I think the Porsche team will be outscoring the Aston Martins, but again, we're not even halfway through this race. And I think there's been more drama in the past 25 minutes than we've had all season. This is absolutely bonkers stuff. We've got cars torn up left and right, cars retired, championship leaders out of the race. Multiple-time race winners getting involved in incidents. The entire top 4 of the field, should I say, getting taken out in one section of the track at the same time. Valorio has found a way past Wilson and slots in ahead. That's an absolutely aggressive move, but Valorio felt like he was ahead, knew he was ahead, at least had conviction enough to slot across the nose of Bird. And now Bird has the Aston Martin teammate of Wilson behind, and Bird with that injured car may let the teammate by. And the Aston Martin of Bird would have to defend from the Mercedes of Young, who has crept up on this group. Mikey has now caught up to the 555 of Mott. Mikey said it's not over yet, and it definitely is. We, again, still have not reached the halfway point of this race. Mikey says, well, I may have a bit of a hurt wing, well, I can still fly, as he catches right back up to the rear of Mott and wants to get back up on those podium positions. See how hard Mott makes it for him, as Mott is the last Mercedes standing to try and score a podium for the team. See how much of a fight Mott puts up and how much of a fight that Mikey is able to put up and try and get this position back. I think it's about time we let things calm down a bit. They have not been very calm, though. Winter with Horner. Winter, again, was at one point in the lead of this race, is now down fighting, trying to defend P13 from Horner. Again, these are two top-skilled drivers, as you have at least seen from the qualifying in the early stages of this race, just getting caught up in unfortunate incidents. They're both down out of the top 10. Again, Winter desperately fighting to hold on to the last spot in the drivers for the GT3. Again, he just needs to hold on to his 10th spot in the standings. But Wilson, who is currently P7, 7 positions ahead, may have an opportunity to skate right on by Craters, who has also not had a good result, is currently P8, or P23, P9 in the standings. Douglas out front, just wants to stay out front. That's all he needs to do. Doesn't have any more work that needs to be done, as we now are officially halfway through this race. Things can officially get boring. They're not going to. Valorio has found himself in P5, wants to get a podium for the BMW, and wants to deny the podium from the Aston Martin. And I think Valorio's the only one in this top group who's got a completely healthy car. I don't see any damage on that BMW. Now, I could be wrong. Mott has some damage on the front. Mott goes 2 tires into the sand at the exit of 4 as they come up 5. Mikey eyes the move, goes for it early, and slots in ahead. Valorio will probably also try and chase down the Aston Martin at the earliest convenience. Mikey now back into P3, has some clear room to run. Can't afford to make mistakes, and a bit of a lockup. You can see that driver left tire, the front left tire, start to slow down very, very much as he was dragging the brakes, as Valorio almost made contact with Mott. The opening kind of showed. Valorio, I think, wanted to go for it, but it very, very quickly dissolved, and now Valorio may try and set up the overtake into the Andretti hairpin. Granados into the pit lane. Norman also in the pit lane. I think Norman maybe missed the pit box. Granado's repairing the car and going back out. And it is an all Porsche show now as Douglas and Wagner have broken free from the rest of the field by quite a large margin. Now just need to head down and continue to race. Franklin McLaren, that again at one point was fighting for the lead of this race, down to P16. And Mott, I think, has found some pace against the Aston Martin of Mikey again, who continues to drag that front left tire down into the corkscrew. That's not going to be good for that tire, as you don't need it a ton. You need it for crucial right-handers like the penultimate corner. Valerio again eyeing that move into the final corner. Kind of has an opening, but again, not enough to go for. And Mikey trying to run away. Is Valerio going to go for it into the hairpin? Yes, he does, but it makes contact, and the BMW and the Mercedes both go around. And Valerio is now forced to stay put. I think could have gone forward. Will go forward. Caligari will come by, and Valerio just unfortunately makes contact there as well. Mott now pulled off of that fight. And uh-oh, this has now been completely turned on its head once again, as there's 3 Aston Martins in P3, 4, and 5. And now Aston Martin, the pendulum swings back in their favor, as I believe the Aston Martins would now be outscoring the Porsche team. Vasquez has made it back up to the top scoring Mercedes, and he is not far behind and is still very hungry out for blood. Elizondo, teammate, still holds on to the fastest lap in this race. Vasquez, with all of this carnage and contact, still has a mission. Yeah, it does kind of seem like turn 1 is maybe not the best place to go for an overtake. Vasquez will try here, though. Will completely disregard my advices. But now we'll try and go around the outside of Wilson and set up the overtake into turn 3. Has to get the nose back around the front, though, is not going to be able to. And Norman gets a 30-second stop-and-go penalty for speeding in pit lane. Vasquez up to P6, now trying to chase down our leaders. Douglas quite a few seconds ahead. I think the total gaps are around 17 or 18 seconds between, and that may be growing as well. But if Vasquez can make it past the Aston Martin of Wilson and then the Aston Martin of Bird again, Bird is in a hurt car, again involved in that incident with Mikey, Winter, Vasquez, and Bird himself. Down rainy curve into the penultimate corner. Vasquez goes wide again, is still trying to close up whatever time he can. We've got a bit of a group here as Jennings in the Porsche up to P9. Trotman Grant immediately behind. And then the McLaren of Horner, actually just gone past the McLaren teammate of Caligari, who likely just let him off by. The 3 of Drain went off the track. But Horner again, who is very quick and has desperately tried to regain positions, has a couple more up for grabs. Could move up from P11 to P9. Vasquez still trying to find a way past Wilson. What has happened to Young around at turn 4? get it righted, and Horner will gain a position there at least. Has slot around the nose of the 246 of Trotman Grant. Now has the Porsche, the number 59 of Jennings, next on the chopping block to try and find a way past. It's getting a bit tight between Wilson and Vasquez. Vasquez is right behind. Sees the opportunity, wanted to go for it. Wilson and then closed that door promptly. Now Vasquez will once again have to try and chase him down. In all of this time, the Porsche of Douglas and Wagner are pulling away ahead. Vasquez, the door open. He desperately wanted to go through it there, but just no opportunity. They try and get the old switcheroo around turn 3, but it's just, again, not going to work. Who do we have in the pit lane? The 913 of Craters, 15 of Elizondo has returned to the pit lane, and Velorio in the pit lane as well. Velorio in the pit lane. I know that he got caught up and went down a few positions, but he must have had a severe contact with the wall and has caused enough damage to need to pull the car into the pit lane. Getting a bit tight between these three for P5, or actually no, for P4. As the two Aston Martins will try to hold the Mercedes at bay, but it's getting more and more difficult for the two Aston Martins. The closer they get to each other, kind of the harder it is for them to run as fast as possible. And Bird seems to be losing in paces. He has bunched up the 713 Aston Martin of Wilson and the 777 Mercedes of Vasquez. And with all of the bad luck tonight, all the chaos, all of the incidents, it is still anyone's race. I would not call this race just yet, as we still have plenty of time for things to happen. Hopefully we got all of the antics out of the way early, because again, I'd say that is about as much chaos as we have seen all season. As Vasquez going to thread the needle into the corkscrew, he does thread the needle past Bird. Bird nearly makes contact with a teammate of Wilson, and the twofer for Vasquez goes up to P4. He's got it done, and it's now clean air between himself and the next spot on the podium, the final spot on the podium of Mikey. We'll see if Vasquez is able to lay down the pace and get that position away. I'd love to say that Vasquez is able to do so, but we saw this at Valencia. It is just a bit unlucky when Vasquez has it going his way. When it comes crunch time, time to really push and go hammer down, as people do tend to call him a Luis Vasquez. Very, very quick, but hammer time for Luis Vasquez in the Mercedes. So he's got to try and catch up to Mikey, but cannot afford to make any mistakes. Again, doesn't need to have an outstanding finish tonight to secure a spot in the top 10 for the finale next week, as he is seated well into the top 10 in P2. But in regards to the teammate, this likely will be enough to move Vasquez into the lead of this championship. And also, looking at the third and fourth spots, Douglas right now might even move ahead of Vasquez. It's going to be very tight between the top three, as Bahena gets a 30-second stop and go penalty for speeding in pit lane. Douglas takes home the win of this race. Vasquez finishes where he is now or worse. We very well could see Douglas move into the lead of this championship. Again, we will need to wait for the official results on the standings to confirm who is going to be in the top 10 and driving a GT3 car next week. And triple points to the podium next week as well. They will be handsomely rewarded for the work that they have put in throughout the season with those triple points for the podium in the finale. First, you had to make it into the top 10, and then from there, you had to make it into the top 3. We'll see how that shakes up both the manufacturer and overall drivers' standings. And it is still anyone's game, even at the top of the standings in the championship. Mott now trying to find a way past the Aston Martin of Bird. .913 of Craters as Wilson, who is just below the cut line in P11, is currently ahead of Winter by a few positions. Although Winter does have about a 30-point gap ahead of Wilson in the championship standings. We very well may have a shakeup of who's going to be in a GT3 next week. Again, we'll have to wait for the official standings when they are posted shortly after the checkered flag. But this season is not locked down whatsoever, and I think the event organizers, that is exactly what they were hoping for, but I don't think they were expecting all of the chaos and the drama that we have had throughout this season. Vasquez still trying to push and close in on the 16 of Mikey, but has not really made any progress so far. Quite a ways to go. Drain for the McLaren team, trying to find a way past the 246 of Trotman Grant. And things have really calmed down after the chaos early in this race. There are going to be quite a few clips made of that early race chaos. And while it seemed like, hey, maybe we've got it ironed out at one spot, immediately more chaos. But again, hopefully we've gotten it all out of our system for tonight and we can have a clean race from here on out. But again, very, very many banged up and damaged race cars, but it is absolutely elbows out racing. Try and do everything you can for both yourself or your team in this championship. What is happening to Wagner? He's been dropping in Delta to the teammate of Douglas, who is now 13 seconds ahead. Just a little bit ago, that gap was 6 seconds. It's now doubled in, I'd say, the past 10 minutes, past 15 minutes. And Mikey, who is still on the podium, and Vasquez is also still closing in. Vasquez much closer than he was. We'll have to wait and see how those deltas go as Norman, the Aston Martin ahead, goes off track and is definitely not going to hinder the Aston Martin teammate of Mikey. So Norman will dive out of the way when necessary. That does grow the gap, though, at least for the moment, between Wagner and Mikey. But Wagner, 13 minutes to hold on. He's got about, I'd say, 6 or 7 laps left to defend for the second place position. And again, Porsche desperate for all of the points that they can get heading into the final round. Watkins Glen, bit of a top speed track. The Porsche still definitely has a chance at victory next week at Watkins Glen, but it is not going to come easy. No victory has come easy throughout this season, and there have not been many consistent winners. It has been the expected drivers for each team that has brought the wins, but it has not been a dominant season. While you could say, yes, Mercedes' dominance early has given them a strong lead as we head into the finale for the Constructors' Championship. All I can say is that it is not over yet. If anything, from what we've seen tonight, not over yet has been 100% the motto of the evening. Wagner, who is still trying to keep the Aston Martin of Mikey at bay. Mikey pushing with everything he's got. And a bit of traffic for Winter is not going to make things, or not for Winter, for Wagner is not going to make things any easier. And the 81 of Breakfast will move to the outside and allow the 99 of Wagner to slot in ahead. Mikey with a bit of a wiggle coming out of the final corner. We are approaching 10 minutes left in this race. The 18 of Bahana in the pit lane. The 97 of Merkel off and around at turn 3, I believe. And yes, hard contact with the wall. Tries to get it fired, backs out, needs to get out of the way of this podium fight that is coming through right behind. And that is big damage on the number 97 Mustang of Merkel. The top scored Mustang right now, but that is going to be an entry into the pit lane for sure, and that is going to be Merkel's night over. Again, yeah, that Mustang has seen better days. Does look like he has left the local Cars and Coffee after he financed his Mustang for 296 months at 34%. And decided to turn the traction control off and get on the throttle, pulling out of the BMW dealership parking lot. As Mustang drivers do. I haven't had too many Mustang jokes this season. Typically don't, as it has really become a very staple car. Consistently winning across multiple leagues. Very, very strong car, and has become a favorite for many drivers. Elizondo back out on track, at least, I think, to cross the finish line under the green flag and at least bring some points to the fold. Merkel into the pit lane to repair the damage on that Mustang. And Mikey, yeah, sure, he's closing in on the Porsche of Wagner, but hello, Mercedes, as Vasquez, you just can't kill him, can you? He has gone all the way down and now all the way back up, and Mikey might say, well, where have you come from? I thought you were done. I thought it was over for you, and Vasquez nearly had it over for him there, going outside into the sand, up the uphill kink, down into the corkscrew. Vasquez gets a much better drive out of the corkscrew, and now Mikey, instead of focusing on pushing forward, he's got to be driving, pretty much looking through the rearview mirror, as Vasquez has made his way all the way back through the field and is now in contention for this final spot on the podium. Mikey desperately needs it for the championship for both Aston Martin and himself. Vasquez wants it to try and keep Douglas at bay. I don't know if it would be enough. There's not much of a points margin between the two of them. But again, points are going to be very, very tight heading into the final round next week. Don't have the calculations right now or any way to really calculate them, and I don't think you could calculate them right now because what we've seen tonight, this may not be anywhere near the correct finishing order. Mikey and Vasquez once again in their fight. This was a fight for the lead, and now it's going to become a fight for the final spot on the podium. Amazing effort from both of these drivers, not giving up with their race whatsoever after that unfortunate contact early on between Mikey and Vasquez. But here they are. Cars were at least in good enough condition to be thrown around a racetrack for a few more laps. And they will duke it out once more. Will Mikey be able to hold back Vasquez? Does Vasquez try and go for the same move? What has Mikey learned? What has Vasquez learned? We're about to find out here in just a moment. And all throughout this time, Wagner is falling back closer and closer. We may have a three-way battle, or I say we definitely have a three-way battle for P2. But it depends on how Mikey or Vasquez are able to handle this battle, because they could just slug it out between the two of them, but that would be leaving Wagner to ride off into the sunset. Vasquez is getting a bit eager, starting to show the offensive, hitting up the hill into the kink. Mikey does not go defensive, knows that he's not close enough, and will not go for the move there, but down into the corkscrew. Coming out of the corkscrew may be a bit of a different story. Mikey, this time much more planted, goes for the shallower, faster line earlier on the throttle. On the previous lap, Mikey did go a bit deep into the corkscrew, and a change in line at the corkscrew. Driver who was able to get on the power earlier gets a massive run down Rainy Curve. Coming out of the final corner, we've just got a couple laps left to go, and it has gotten boring for Douglas, who is way up ahead, just needs to keep his nose clean, and he will be okay to bring home the win for Porsche, and possibly the win that bumps him up into the championship lead. Wagner has to try and hold back the Aston Martin and Mercedes behind, desperately needs to score whatever points he can for the Porsche team. Just needs to finish ahead of Mikey, really. Things have kind of evened out between the two, as Jennings up to P10, Winter P13. Vasquez, Mott, Young, and Breakfast in the Mercedes. But Mikey, Wilson, Bird, those three drivers in the top 10. Both Porsche and Aston Martin have three drivers in the top 10. And then Winter P13. So it is going to get a bit antsy here towards the end, especially for Wagner, who is definitely championship minded. I'd say, do we have three TRC season champions throughout multiple different seasons fighting here for this last spot on the podium? The battle between Mikey and Vasquez is on, side by side, down into the Andretti hairpin. Does Vasquez get the old switcheroo? Mikey not going to give the position up that easily, but Mikey run out of road there. Is Vasquez going to be asked to give that one back, or is he just going to take it as it is? Don't know of exactly how close they got to each other there. Vasquez has locked in P3. That is going to take crucial points away from the Aston Martin team. But if Vasquez is able to catch the Porsche of Wagner, does that take crucial points away from the Porsche team? Again, Douglas will be likely bringing home the lead. Is Mikey going to go for it down into the corkscrew? Does he want to get late on the brakes? He gets right up onto the rear of Vasquez. Wagner also still there just ahead. I think we're going to have 2 more laps left in this race, possibly 3. Mikey still wants to go for it, wants to go for the lunge into the penultimate corner, but the failed move into that corner does set him on a suboptimal line into the final corner. We will roar up the pit straight as Mikey will still try and hold on to Mercedes of Vasquez. Vasquez now has his sights set on the number 99 Porsche of Wagner. Mikey not counted out of this one yet. I don't think you could. Wagner going to be very defensive, not going to make it easy for Vasquez. And when that time comes, when this defense from Wagner really starts to show, that'll pull Mikey right back into this fight. Your podium is not set yet, ladies and gentlemen. But we will find out in about 2 minutes, maybe 3 minutes time, who is going to be on that podium. Shortly after the race, when the points are tallied, we will find out who is going to be in the top 10 heading into the endurance finale next week at Watkins Glen, in which 10 drivers will be running in GT3s and see how much of the rest of the field is going to be running in GT4. This next lap will be the final lap. Next lap for the overall field, that is. And there is Wagner bunching up this second, third, and fourth place position. Top 2 spots in this battle are the final 2 spots on the podium. Mikey has just been knocked off of that podium. Vasquez wants to knock Wagner down a step on the podium. And that would essentially be throwing Wagner into the clutches of Mikey. It's got to be a perfect run from here to the end for Wagner. He does have the ability to hold on to this position all the way to the end of this race, but it's not going to be easy. Vasquez, a master at manufacturing an overtake, but also a bit of a master at finding the limit as well. We have seen Vasquez in these positions very, very many times throughout different seasons. And when you think maybe everything has gone back his way, he's done everything he can to try and regather positions lost, it all falls apart in one way or another. See if it happens this time for Vasquez. Douglas leads the final lap of this race, and this is going to be the battle heading onto the final lap. Franklin in the McLaren ahead is going to have to bow out of the way with those blue flags. Does the door open for Vasquez? Wagner caught out. They make contact door to door to each other. Wagner tried to close it off. Vasquez was there. Vasquez not going to move. Is Mikey going to try and find a way past down into the Andretti hairpin? Wagner goes deep, wants to get it lined up around the outside. Mikey finds a way up the inside, forces Wagner around behind the Mustang of, I believe that may be Bahena, but Vasquez is going to pull away, and I think he's going to run away with this second place position. Mikey and Wagner swapped positions as well. Wagner goes off the track, nearly went off and around. Mikey does have an opportunity to try and recoup whatever he has left. It is a large gap to close, but it does not mean that it's impossible. We'll see how brave Mikey gets to try and catch that Mercedes up ahead. But again, the crucial points have been taken away from the Aston Martin team as of now. Same thing with the Porsche of Wagner, though. Douglas takes the checkered flag. And Vasquez in P2 with Mikey right behind. Is Mikey going to be close enough for a late lunge into the final corner? It'd be a lunge from a mile back, and I don't think it's going to be enough. Vasquez will come across the line and bring home P2. I'm sure there may be some words swapped among drivers after this one. Mikey takes home P3. Wagner P4. Horner, after all of that, will bring home P5. Wilson will bring home P6 for Aston Martin. Mott P7 Bird will bring home P8. Norman P18. Caligari P19. Bahena P20. Elizondo will bring home P21 after his unfortunate disconnection. And I wonder if that is going to drop Elizondo out of the lead of this championship heading into the final round. Bird takes home P8. Young comes across the line P9. Drain will come across the line P10. What has happened to Jennings? That's crucial for the Porsche team, as he's going to give up a couple spots to the Aston Martin. Winter P11, Trotman Grant P12, Jennings P13, Breakfast P14, Franklin P15. It's Douglas in the Porsche on top for Porsche. And at the end of the race, Douglas P1, Vasquez P2, Mikey P3, Wagner P4, Horner P5, Wilson P6, Mott P7, Bird P8, Young P9, Drain P10, Winter P11, Trotman Grant P12, Jennings P13, Breakfast P14, Franklin P15, Granados P16, Merkel P17, Norman P18, Caligari P19, Bahena P20, Elizondo P21, Valoria P22, Harris P23, Craters P24, and Atwell P25. Craters, again, was close to those bubble positions, so we'll see when the standings are tallied up and we find out who our top 10 is going to be heading into the final round. We'll find out who will be in GT3s and who will be in GT4s. Thank you all for tuning in. See you all next week for the final round endurance race at Watkins Glen. And I hope to see at least a few of you with me this weekend, 8 a.m. Central Time, for the green flag of the Aztec Racing Bathurst 12-hour, an event that I am 100% excited to finally be able to stream. And I hope to see a few of you there. Please consider following and subscribing to the Twitch channel. Helps me a lot if you do. And please subscribe to the YouTube channel if you would be able to. We are going to go ahead and find somebody to raid, so please don't go anywhere. And I think we are going to go and raid. Well, let's raid Vasquez. Actually, no, it says Vasquez was racing Zandvoort. He's not racing Zandvoort. He was racing with us. Come on, Vasquez. We'll go ahead and raid Irish Clone. So thank you all for tuning in, and I will see you all next week and hopefully this weekend for the Bathurst 12-hour.